We stopped here and we were identifying entity classes, and we were able to identify this group of entity classes. We are be able to identify league owner, tournaments, entries group. We're going to have multiple groups like player, advertisers, and spectators, advertisements, advertisement accounts, matches, player, and so on. So this is here the entity classes. And keep in mind that it's not necessarily that from the first phase that we'll be able to identify every entity class, or even the identified one, maybe you're going to later on remove it. So we cannot reach to the consistent or final version or the agreed upon entity classes of the first round. We need to go multiple iterative, multiple rounds until you be able to say, yeah, I'm really confident this is the information that I need to save it permanently. We may add extra later on, or we may drop some or join some of these. All right, so now as we did for the entity, we need to do same thing for boundary. Let us now consider the same set of nouns we identified already, and now we need to figure out which of these nouns good candidate for boundary objects. Again, boundary object, it's simply the classes that are going to represent the user interface entities, like a form, button, menus, acknowledgements, notice, any kind of such interaction with an actor. So a list of advertisement, it's simply to show a list. So that means the form that the system going to display it in front of the league owner. So that this is the list of the advertisements need to be, or this is the list of advertisement the advertiser is interesting to show. Answers, that mean the system asks, the system responds. So these kind of things, notification because the system notifies. Again, yeah, this is correct. This is the way that you need to also to recognize these kind of classes. System asks, system notify, all of these good candidate for user interface. So based on that, I can say a form, system asks the league owner, system notify the selected sponsor, going to show their answers to the league owner. This is good candidate for classes that need to be created to be shown in front of the user, which is the league owner here that create or announce for tournament. All right, so for the rest of the use case description, I want for the same approach, look at the things that interact with the system, interact with the users, and ask yourself whether you need to create an object for it, a class to be represented or not. It could be just an attribute inside another class, like a button can be an attribute because now I know it is an object, but once we use it within the IDEs, it just acts as an attribute. So based on that, I can say the system prompt the league owner. This is here another thing that is implicitly exists. Advertisement banners is good candidate as well, but in this phase, I just drop it. But if you ask about this, yes, the banners that need to be displayed, it should be also act as kind of boundary objects. All right, we have one more identification here, the system notify. We mentioned about this. System prompt, system ask, system notify, system acknowledge. All of these need to be identified as a boundary classes. Based on that, I can now start to write them down here and then try to describe them by your own wording to make sure that you really understand it and you're really confident that this should be an entity object. And this, again, the same thing that you need to do during the assignment. So based on that, I have list of boundary classes, tournament form, request sponsorship form, sponsorship request. Again, this is when you say the system ask, the system prompt, a sponsorship reply, notify entries group form, entries group notice. Again, the naming here, you can name it the way you like, but it should have the meaning. When you describe it here, then you need to make sure that you describe it based on the requirements, not just any random thing. All right, now we need to identify control objects. In this example here, I identified only one controller, but you know that we may have multiple controllers. You may say that my approach to have one controller per view, or one controller per UI, or one controller per control objects, or one controller per an actor. In this example, I identify one controller with the use case. The use case announce tournaments. I say that it's enough to have one controller, but again, this is something subjective, but you need to have your own strong rationale behind it. In this way, I say that it's enough to have one class to control the whole behavior of announce tournament. So this is why I have just one controller start at the beginning and they manage at the end of the use case. But keep in mind that we may have a different approach. This doesn't conflict the correct solutions. All right, so now we be able to identify the three kinds of objects. Now we need to learn how to determine the associations between these classes and whether this association can act as or consider as aggregation as more restrictive relationship between classes. And once we find the classes, what kind of attribute we can identify. Now we're still considering the arena case study. And let us now look at the entity classes. We are going to consider only entity classes in this analysis. And we see that this is what we have identified earlier. We have a league owner, tournament, and the rest for the entities. What we need to do, we're going to write them in a table like this. So this is here the entity classes we have identified. Let us try to add some description using our own wording again to make sure that we're really confident that this is an entity class going to hold some information permanently. And if so, what kind of attributes we need to add? If we'll be able to do so, we can write a class for it. And we consider only entity classes. So what is league owner? The league owner is an actor creating a league and responsible for organizing tournament within a league. So again, this is not copy-paste. It's not copy-paste from the requirement. This is simply what I try to say based on my own understanding. If this is the case, what is the information that you need to ask? You can assume that it's identify or act as identifier for the league owner. Can act as your initial view of the attributes. One can say the league owner number, the league owner name. I can say name is a good for now until you say that if we need to create unique numbers, you can do so as well. You can write it now, you can leave it later on. But for now, I can say name is enough to represent the league owner. Let us draw this. So now here for my first iteration, say, okay, now I have a class called league owner, and I have a name act defined as a string. This is valid representation, valid entity class, UML class notation. Good. Now for the league is simply, the league represents the community for running tournaments. A league has limited number of tournaments. A league is associated with a specific game. This is again my own wording to describe league. What we can write here as an attribute from what we have here. League represents community for running tournaments. A league has limited number of tournaments. A league is associated with a specific game. So I start to see here, yeah, we need to write the league name. We need to consider how many tournaments, the number of tournaments. So let us start, okay, I need to add a name, maximum number of tournaments. You can see here, because it's a limited number of tournaments, I just name it here, max number of tournaments. And then a league is linked to a specific game. Write a game here. If this is the case, let us go ahead and add this class. So now we have a league owner. The league owner create league. That means we need to know that who did create the league. For sure, any league should be created by some league owner. So we need also to maintain this information. This information should be saved permanently. So we need to save here in the league who did create the league. And if the owner here create number of leagues, we need to know how many leagues has been created by that owner, so that later on we can check whether they reach to the S maximum or not. That means we need to have a relationship, the association relationship between these two classes. We say that here the league owner creates multiple leagues, one or more. I call it here products. You can name the way you like, as we just name, maximum number of tournaments, games. And I say here, inside the league owner, we're going to have a field called products, and that field is simply a collection. The type of this collection is league. The league itself has an owner created by someone who owns the league. So I write here owner defined as private of type league owner. That means here inside this class, I should have an owner of type league owner. So now we see that we'll be able to draw two classes and the relationship between two classes, the association as well. Now, tournament. What do you mean by tournament? We already identify an entity class of named tournament. The tournament is a series of matches among a set of players. Tournaments end with a single winner. The way players accumulate points and matches are scheduled is dictated by the league owner in which the tournament is organized. If this is not clear, feel free to go back to the tournament itself, the definition. We define the tournament here. The league owner, we said that the league owner specify a game, specify a name, application start and end date during which player can apply for a tournament. That means when we create a tournament, we need to maintain tournament name, starting date for the application and end date for the application for the player to apply, and also define start and end date to conduct the tournament, and also need to identify the maximum number of players. For the league owner to coordinate tournaments, they need to identify this information. Starting and ending date for the player to apply, starting and end date for the player to conduct tournaments, and the maximum number of players per each. This is some information about the tournament if it is not clearly identified in my description. So based on that, what do you think? What can we add here as an attribute? This is not final. The only important thing is to define the entity and come up with reasonable attribute names. One is enough, as we did here for the name. But if the information given to you, it's clearly indicating some other attribute, feel free to add it, like we say here, game, maximum number of tournament. It's very clear here in the description. But if something like this and you're not really sure, the identification name is enough. Based on that, I can say, based on my understanding, we need to have a name for the tournament for sure. And then play start date, play end date, maximum number of players, exclusive sponsors. And this is also from the description I showed you in the previous slides. That means for each tournament, we defined some kind of sponsors, whether it is exclusive sponsors or sponsor per demand. That means that should be here, say yes or no. And if it is yes, what kind of sponsorship going to be? So based on that, let us now continue our drawing. I added here tournaments. Then I say the tournament name, and then the date, maximum number of players, and whether it has exclusive sponsor and what the name of that. Notice that here there is something I rated here in red because I'm not really sure. For example, here the game is simply a string, or the game need to be an object by itself. So for now, I don't know, or just I'm not sure. So for the first iteration, you can see here I started by the first iteration. My first iteration, assuming that the game is of type string. The exclusive sponsor is of type string. But later on, I'm going to find that game itself is a class. And the sponsor itself is a class as well. So later on, I'm going to adjust this. And then when you say the league it's within a tournament, that means the league host number of tournaments, then we can write here the relationship between leagues and tournament. That means tournament should be created within a league. That means inside the league class here, we need to write another attribute of type tournament. How many tournaments inside this league? And I see here 1 to n. That means it's not one too many, it's one to specific number. And this is going to be a collection. Then inside the league class, I'm going to have a collection of type tournaments. And the name of this collection is tournaments. Okay, so let us go back to the rest of the entity classes. Then now I have match. What's match? Match is a contest between 2 or more players within a game. The outcome of the match can be a single winner and a set of loser or tie. Some tournament style may disallow ties. Okay, so what I said here for the match, we said that here it belongs to a tournament, and match has number of players. Match is, you can see here, it's a contest between 2 or more players within a game. So we need to take care about game, and then we have some results, because we say match can be a single winner or set of losers. So we need to have some results here. Again, you may come up with other lists, as long as they don't conflict the requirements, that should be okay. Based on that, let us draw this. Then we have a match, the match related to a game. Again, now I added here as a string, but still, I'm not sure whether game is an attribute or game is an object by itself. It's a string, or just we need to create a class of class name game, and the date and the result. You may write here ID, game ID, or in other identification information. So what the relationship between matches and tournaments? Then when we announce for the tournaments, we also create some matches. So here I can also have aggregation, and keep in mind that you not necessarily from the first iteration you can recognize aggregation relationship. You may consider all the relationship at the first place is just an association. If you are really sure it is whole part relationship like this, then feel free to use it as composition. Something like tournaments and matches. For sure it is whole part relationship. But if you just write here just one single solid line, it's good as well. We cannot say this is wrong. If you write here, the relationship between league and tournament, one solid line without this diamond, it's still correct. So you can keep this as a rule at the beginning. Show me only the lines, not necessarily to identify this is aggregation or composition or not, because it is kind of association as well. Later on, when we reach to the final phase that is ready for the developer, then we can identify some restriction that we need to have it in the real Java code. So now here I'll be able to define the relationship between tournament and the matches, because we say that in the previous description, the match is related to a tournament. So now let us move on. For the player register with the league, accumulate points during matches and according to the expert rating of the league. So player, for sure, if you need to write an attribute, we need to know the player name, right? This is the basic things. So we can say the name of the player and the result, because it says that here accumulating, start to accumulate points. So we need to know where we need to store these points. So we can say it's the result. Based on that, we can say now I need to add a player. And the player is simply playing a game, playing a match. That means it's very clear there is a relationship between the player and match. So we can see here we have a relationship, and now notice that here we have many to many relationships, star to star. That means one player can play multiple matches. Each match can be played by multiple players. So here we have many-to-many relationship. And when we have such things, it's very dangerous that when we have many-to-many relationship, because if we need to store some data that is related to both of them, then you need to worry about that. We cannot save it in one of them. It should be something in between. Look at it here. We have a result and we have a result. This result is a comment between matches and player. And the relationship between matches and the player, it is many to many. If you recall our discussion on this area, we see that employee hiring, a company hiring some employees, and the employees may work in multiple companies. And what we're going to store the salary. This is the same situation here. Matches can be played by multiple players. Each player can play multiple matches where we need to store the score or the result. For now, we'll keep it that way, but later on we need to change this. All right, so now let us continue. Advertiser, what's the is an actor interested in displaying some advertisement banners during the matches. So we can say I need to store name of the advertiser and which tournament going to sponsor, and also advertiser need to have an account. This is just my first impression when I say advertiser. Let us go ahead and add another or a new class, my diagram. So, okay, now I say I am in the iteration 2. I'm going to add the advertiser here. And this advertiser going to sponsor tournaments. That means this tournament is sponsored by this particular advertiser. Remember here, I add advertiser exclusive sponsor as a string. But now the sponsor itself is represented by, or the advertiser is represented by a class by itself. And that class has the name and other information. So in this case, that should be an association relationship instead of just primitive data type. So instead of having exclusive sponsor, I write here sponsored by, and the type of this sponsored is simply advertiser. And we have it here many to one. That means for every single tournament, we have one sponsor. And that advertiser may sponsor multiple tournaments. So again, one is enough for now. But if you need to add a collection name to be stored here, you can add it also as an end role and other end. But for now, this is enough. So advertiser going to advertise or show advertisement. That means we need to store some information about the advertisement. It's simply multimedia content, like images, videos, animations, audio only, video only. This is, we call it just multimedia content provided by the advertiser for a display during matches. So we can see here the type of the advertisement, like as I mentioned, video, image, audio, and so on. If it is a video, then what is the duration for the payout? And then this is related to which game. We can also add here this information. Based on that, I need to add one more class for advertisements. So the advertiser going to display or ask to display some advertisements. This advertisement related to some games. So again, the game here, I'm not sure whether it's going to be a string or a class by itself. Notice that here we have also game as a string. Now it come up here, I also need to add which game. So for now, I don't know. Most likely going to have a separate class to represent the game. But now there is a relationship between advertiser and advertisements. So we can say it is again whole parts relationship. One advertiser may display multiple advertisements as a promotions. This is the name that comes to my mind as an attribute inside the advertiser class. And also inside the advertisement class, I add here an attribute called creator. who did create this advertisement. And it is one to many. That means one advertiser may have multiple advertisements, multiple videos, multiple images, but each of these videos are created by one advertiser only. Accounts, we said that advertisers need to create accounts so that the system can charge them and do step some financial transactions. So an account represents the amount currently owned by an advertiser and history of charges and payments. So for the account, I can say we need to maintain the balance, history of charges, and history of payments. We can write also account number. If you write just account number and balance, this is good as well. Then we added here account. We need to maintain information about the balance, charge, payments. You can write account number and so on. So there is a relationship between advertiser and account because account is related to the advertiser. We cannot have account without advertiser. So that means here, for each advertiser, we're going to maintain a statement. And this statement simply, I say it here, of type account. So the advertiser maintain a reference to the account, and each reference should have information about the balance, charge, and payment. Interest group, we see that here we have three kinds of groups. Interest group are list of users in the arena which share an interest, for example, for a game or a league. Interest group are used as a mailing list for notifying potential actors for new events. All right, so interest group, we can say we need an interest with group of players, group of advertisers, and group of spectators. Once the tournament has been announced, then we know that it's not all the registered players have interest to this tournament. Some of them. Not all advertisers have interest. Not all spectators have interest to every single tournament. So for every single tournament, we have some group of interests. So this is why here I call it interest group. So we need to add this because we need to store them per tournament. How do we know that who was interested at that time? So we need to store this information in an entity class. So I added here interest group, but we said that this is simply represent three kinds of lists. So I'm going to say now interest group, and I maintain a reference here to the league, but this interest group itself can be spectator, it can be sponsor, or it can be players. So here it is whole part relationship again. Interest group contains spectators, contains group of advertiser, contains group of players. So we can see that here we have reached to good level of our model, but there is some other things that we need to look at. We said that the game, we need to look at this. Do you need to store some information more than just the name of the game? It's good to have it a separate class because it's not just a name, it's not just a string. This is by itself host number of other attributes. So it's good to have a class game. In this case, we need to create a new class game and make the league reference to that game, make the match reference to that game, make advertisement also reference to that game. And also we need to look at this here. When you say match with the player many to many, and we need to put the results. So I'm going to revise this diagram and reorganize it in a different way to be easy to read. So for the third iteration, I added here the game. This is here what I added. A game class and link it to the league, link it to the match, link it to the advertisement based on my previous diagram. I changed the location for the interest group to looks nicer, but I didn't change anything on it. And now look at this here between match and the player. We said that it is many to many. Because it's many to many, I added here the association link a separate class called result. And this is going to be here one to many. This dashed line simply you can read it that way. One match has many results. Each result related to one player. One player has many results. Each result related to one match. So this is one to many, many to one. And by doing so, I think we have reached here to some good model for what we understand from the requirements. Later on, we can revise this if we gain more information about the requirement of the arena. This is enough for now. And goodbye for everyone.